Most tool lanyards on the market today will keep the tool from hitting the ground, but that does not mean they are all created equal. Standards for this type of equipment are non-existent, or in their early stages at best. Because of this, a lot of people will cobble together whatever they can find and call it a tool lanyard. At the Drop Cop Academy, we're here to teach you that not all equipment is created equal. And in this section, we're going to teach you about dynamic forces and how choosing the right tool lanyard can help mitigate those forces. Dynamic forces are the forces generated when a drop occurs. They can become much more impactful depending on the mass of the object or the distance of the drop. If possible, it's always best to connect that tool tether to a static anchor point. The reality is, on the job site, most tool tethers are connected to the body by the harness or by a belt. In the event of a fall, the body then becomes the anchor point, and the body sees the forces generated through the tool lanyard. If chosen wisely, the proper tool lanyard can relieve the forces the body sees. Ergodyne Squids tool lanyards are built with a maximum strength stretch cord throughout to help reduce the forces the body sees. Let's take a look at the forces generated by dropping the same 8-pound wrench from the Squids tool lanyard in two similar competitive styles. To measure the forces, we'll use a load cell, which tells us the peak forces generated in a drop. Let's look first at the competitors. Now let's take a look at an Ergodyne Squids tool lanyard. Knowing those are the forces your body might see, which tool lanyard would you want to use? Yep, us too. Welcome to Ergodyne's overview of objects at height safety. Today we will discuss solutions to actively prevent dropped objects on the job site. In human fall protection, manufacturers use the ABCs to easily categorize the types of equipment used to protect workers against falling. In dropped object prevention, we use the 3 T's to categorize active engineering controls one can easily implement to prevent falling objects on the job. Let's review these 3 categories and some examples of each. Trapping is a term used to describe the installation of retrofit attachment points on tools and primary anchoring locations. These retrofit attachments can adaptively be applied or trapped onto these tools and equipment prior to use. Anchor attachments should be installed onto locations that are secure and never be intended for heavier tools if applied to the individual. Tool attachments come in a variety of designs based on the tools they are intended for. These tool traps should never compromise the integrity of the tool, impede the tool's primary function, or create a new safety hazard altogether. They are available in 1- or 2-step applications. 1-step tool attachments are straightforward traps that install with a focused application and are typically intended for more specific tools. Slips that slide onto screwdrivers and hex keys, brackets and wraps that fit specific power tools or tape measures, and sleeves that house cell phones or liquid containers are just some examples. Two-step attachments involve two separate solutions combined into one attachment. Tool tails are applied onto a tool and then trapped by a tape or a shrink to secure them. Regardless of the type of attachment, make sure it is rated by the manufacturer and labeled appropriately. Tethering is the retention of the tools and equipment being used to the anchor points that hold them. This is often achieved through the use of a tool lanyard. These lanyards should have the proper connections on each end for the tools and anchors being used. They should also be made with a shock-absorbing design whenever possible. As tool tethering has evolved, a variety of tool lanyard styles have surfaced, but most fall into 5 basic categories. Wrist lanyards use the individual's wrist as an anchor point to minimize drop distance and snag hazards. Coil lanyards and retractable lanyard designs draw the length back inward to minimize snag hazards as well. Traditional lanyards are the most popular and use a predetermined length to tie off tools. Specialty lanyards concentrate on specific equipment to tether. Regardless of the type of tool tether, make sure it is rated by the manufacturer and labeled appropriately. The third T, topping, consists of the containers workers use to transport tools and equipment to and from heights and store them while at heights. There are 2 types of containers used. Tool pouches and bags are typically carried on individuals to keep their contents at hand while working. These often remain stationary. Hoist buckets and bags are transferred by a different means, typically lifting them in a portable fashion to and from heights. These containers, regardless of type or mode of transportation, should have a secure closure or top that can cover the contents and prevent them from spilling if inverted. All containers may have tethering points available to attach tool lanyards, but if a container does not have a secure closure, it must have these tethering points available. Regardless of the type of container, make sure it is rated by the manufacturer and labeled appropriately.